Welcome. This is episode number 30 of the Wise Mind Fireside Chats, the Wi-Fi chats. Suspects as episode 29 with the added luxury, I'm going to call it, the benefit of Mr. Brett Corcoran. And our topic for this conversation is problems need to be solved, tensions need to be managed. What's the difference? What does that actually mean in real terms? So I'm going to open the floor. Marcella.
Open the floor and then you call on me. I guess problems need to be solved. That's the first one. Because I believe, there's always a solution to a problem. And it's our choice, my choice on how we're going to solve them. But tensions normally, and problems can be anything, but tension for me normally deals with people. And tensions need to be managed. I definitely agree with that. That, you know, how do you handle a situation? And and a lot of times tension may be one-sided, right? The other person, you're tense, but the other person is has no idea or doesn't care, and they're doing their own thing. So it goes back to we have choices and how are we going to handle the tension? How are we going to manage it?
Agreed. I totally like problems for me are more like concrete things, right? They're just things that something happened, it doesn't work. I have to figure out how to fix that, right? Like everything, I read a book called Everything is Figure Outable by Marie Forleo, and it's just there's nothing that can't be figured out, right? So that's with a tangible, something's not working. But as far as tensions, it's 100% with people, right? It's interpersonal, and it's even personal, right? Like I mean, I might have tensions with my own self that I have to like manage myself, and so even if there's tensions with other people, I still think that the first step in that is self management, getting yourself straight before you can figure out how to go about managing it with someone else, because doesn't mean the other person is going to want anything to do with being managed or involved with the management of the tension. So it's an internal thing first. Start with yourself first, then decide how you want to proceed going forward. But that's how I differentiate. Problems are things, actual things that have a solution to. Tensions are interpersonal.
Yeah, I agree. I think problems are definitely something going on in a situation. Tensions I can carry, or another person in the situation can carry. And that's where they may be putting that on that situation, or I could be putting on that situation. But if I have awareness and I can catch myself with a feeling or acting a certain way that's not putting a good intention out into solving the problem, and I'm putting attention on somebody else rather than coming at it in a clean way where the problem gets solved at a quicker time. Because if you come out without putting attention on it and it's clean, I feel like they want to join the team. They want to solve the issue, the problem. And that now you have a together cohesive team working to solve that same problem. And that can go in relationships, whether it's on a job site, an office relationship, right? It all works together. And I think, yeah, I think you're right, 100%, Erica. It definitely starts with us or myself and what I'm putting out there. So if I can keep it without the tension, that problem kind of shrinks. It may be huge for me, but they don't need to know how huge it is and how much stress I have or tension about it. I just, I'm looking to solve it. So what do you guys think?
For
Um,
me, oh,
Go on, Gabby.
sorry.
Sorry.
For me, tensions are always communication problems. Even when I have a problem with somebody else as intention with them and they're not aware of it, it probably starts, as you wisely said, Erika and Brad, with my self-talk. I might read something into them they don't mean. So I might engage in mind reading. I may interpret something they did as, oh my God, they're after me in a way, right? But they're not even aware of it, that they hurt me or what I said did land the wrong way. So it's usually a communication problem because we don't ask questions. We don't go and say, look, what did you mean by that? We're often not honest. That's a lot of the times when tensions come up as well in the relation, in the relationships, that we don't go and say, look, what you just said there, that actually hurt me. What do you mean by that? And usually people go like, what do you mean it hurt you? Because they're not aware of it. So tensions often start with misunderstandings rather than people intentionally trying to be nasty to us. So I always think tensions with good communication can be very well managed. While, yeah, a problem is me trying to figure out why my website, when a button isn't working. I can solve that, as Erika said, they're all solvable.
So, Gabby, I think that you're correct with communications, but I also think that tensions has a lot to do with our expectations and what we are expecting and that expectation is not being fulfilled. But it also goes back to communication, is communicating what our expectations were, and that communicating will solve the issue of the tension. But most of the time, I think it has a lot to do with our expectation.
I think problems are a great thing for the net of tension to get snagged on because the problem itself is just there. It's a thing. It is whatever it is. But we're going to all attach different meanings to it. And if the problem triggers something, a childhood wound, a trauma, a grief, a sorrow that's hanging around, and I stop being in my highest adult wise mind self, it's very easy for that to become a tension that somebody else doesn't know they're standing on. So that completely goes with Gabby's communication and also our self-awareness, recognizing that, okay, I'm feeling like this and I'm kind of reverting to a younger self that wasn't actually very well equipped to deal with this. So let me take a step back and think about what I'm projecting into this problem that's, as Brett said, making a bigger and bigger problem, which is then all about the social dynamic and each of our individual feelings around it. So I'm completely agreeing with everything everybody's already said. But I'm interested to know if any of you can recognize in yourselves when a problem becomes a tension for you with others.
Okay, so I, I'm sure, and we're going to talk about this in another episode, I'm pretty sure, but for me, it's all of everything, right? Like what Alec just said. So when I'm having a tension, when there's tension for me in whatever relationship I'm talking about, like Marcella said, it's 9 out of 10 times comes back to what did I expect to happen here and why wasn't I getting that, right? So then it again returns to me. It's return to sender because, okay, what was that expectation and why, right? So then that opens up the ability to go understand yourself more. Like, why do I even think that I need that or want that from this person? What is that about? Then the next step is, well, did I communicate that, like Gabby said, properly to the person that I'm expecting it from, right? So we go through this I go through this internal checklist of all of that. What was I expecting? Why? Did I communicate it properly? If not, whatever. And then the third step, though, if I'm having attention, if it's not one of those two things, it 9 out of 10 times, 10 out of 10 times is because there's, and we'll talk about this, a boundary that has either been stepped over or has not been established, right? So it's an indication for me to take a look at it. Do I have a loose boundary here? Do I even have a boundary at all here? And if I don't, whose fault is that? It's not their fault. It's my fault because I'm the one that's getting tense about this, right? And then there's a level of not feeling understood, which again comes back to the communication, right? Like, you're not understanding me. I'm feeling tense about it. How do I have to communicate to you to get this clear? But yeah, I can definitely identify, Alec, back to your question, areas where there's a problem that caused tension between me and whatever, right? So, and then Brett and I are partners, and so I'm gonna just full disclosure here. I'm sure he's not gonna care, but we have a pool. We have a pool. It's my pool. I'm the one who wanted the pool, right? So it's become my pool. And Brett was very clear in his communication that he wants nothing to do with the pool, right? He doesn't want to have to clean the pool. He's not involved with the pool. But we all know I need help with the pool because he's the mechanical guy. I need help getting it set up. So he winds up helping me. But there's some tension there usually every season when we get into opening and closing the pool because it's been there. So we constantly have to manage this tension where the communication has to be very top notch about what's going on there. But the pool is, when it comes to opening and closing the pool, it can be a source of tension for Brett and I. But then we can both enjoy it. So it's like we manage the tension around the pool, but that's where a problem, the pool, influences the tension between us. So full disclosure, we have 3 problems.
Talk about that on boundaries. I'll come back to that. So there's something about sometimes I feel like we may have expectations that the other person is aware as to what they're doing. Like, and the reality is they may not be aware. They may be running on autopilot because I've ran on autopilot and have not been aware as to the way I'm reacting to people and the way I'm moving through my life. So it was the point where I started becoming aware as to how I was moving through is when I started feeling different about situations and put me more in control of having that power to control the emotions and control the way I respond and feedback. Right. So there's something about awareness and expectations, thinking that somebody else is just as aware as you are, and they may not. So that can bring up attention if we have that expectation. And so the expectations is really something to be aware of. Like, am I expecting this person to understand this like where I am? And maybe they're not there yet. And that's okay. They don't need to be. That's, where I am. So there's a part of that that's really just understanding people and where they really are could ease tensions. You kind of know somebody who's aware. You can say certain things and they respond in a certain way where they're not aware, or they respond in a way where they receive it. And then you have another conversation on it and you're like, oh, they get it. Right. But not everybody is fully present in that moment. So yeah, just there's a lot of, and it all comes down to myself or us, the person that's communicating, to be aware as to how we're presenting it. And if we're putting that tension on there, even though it could be top notch level 10, doesn't mean it's top-notch level 10 for them because you don't know what they're going through and where they're at. So all you can do is express what you need from them. And then once you express that, you can ask for feedback. Like, do you understand what I need? Is that feasible? Can we get this done in X amount of time? And and they may say, well, yes, I can, but I need so and so. Great. So if I got you another person, we can meet this point in X amount of time. Yeah, beautiful. You got it. Let me get you another person. Get started. Somebody will be there in a little bit. So it's organizing and orchestrating the communication piece and getting that feedback from them and controlling the tensions that you have because it's a top notch. Like, I got to get this done, but it's not for them. So it's getting the buy in from the other person and the want to do it and work together. So, yeah. We'll get to the boundary piece.
Yeah, I love what you said there, Brad and Erica. And for me, to come back to your question, Alec, as well, how do we know? For me, it's my feelings, emotions. I know that there is tension building when I suddenly get frustrated or angry or I want to snap, right? That's when I know something is amiss. And I think this is where our self-awareness and self-management comes in, because if we can step back and say, hold on, I'm getting frustrated here. Is this person really frustrating me? Or am I frustrated because, as Brett rightly said, they're just not aware what's going on in me, or some expectation I had wasn't met? And the last time I experienced that, it was actually, we're in January now, so Christmas is about 4 weeks ago, and I had expectations of a really nice, lovely, quiet Christmas because I was tired, and it didn't happen because chaos unfolded, right? Between people having no electricity and needing to cook on the 25th in our house while we're trying to cook, and all kind of things happening. And it was just not what I expected. And I really had to step back and take a deep, deep breath and go, hold on, it's not going your way. It's not going the way you imagined it. It's okay. Everything happening has a solution, and there is no reason to get frustrated. It will be okay. But I really had to step back and take this breath. And that's the learning curve I had, because years ago, I probably would have gone, right? So, and all hell would have broken loose. But yeah, it's a learning curve, and it's something we have to work on all the time and be very aware of.
Brett's mentioned this, somebody else's problem being a lot higher priority for them. And, a younger version of myself used to say something along the lines of a lack of planning and preparation on your part doesn't constitute an emergency on mine, which, in case you hadn't guessed, is like throwing petrol on a fire when somebody's in a state of crisis. And I remember saying something very similar to that, paraphrasing what I just said, to a guy who had rented an establishment that I was managing, and they were celebrating a 200 and odd year old tradition. It really was an emergency on his part, and I did nothing to help that. I mean, in the end, I did, obviously, because I was managing the establishment, and it was right and proper that I did. But because of the way he approached, and demanding, and we need this and that hasn't happened, and like, whoa, steady. It's a bit like Christmas, comes around at the same day every year, so lack of planning. Now, of course, reverting to what I said earlier, and the self-awareness that we've all mentioned, is just that, okay, I can actually understand why this is a problem for you, and I don't need to add to your stress or tension. And that's the growth part for me.
Can you imagine that feeling of holding and being aware as to how you're coming off? And So when somebody's up and it's all crazy and you can just take that breath rather than get fully engaged and meet their level, they're here and they come to you and all of a sudden now you're there and it's like that communication. It's wow, I don't have to go there. It's like, oh, all right. So what is it that you need? Right? How can I? All right, we can get that. Understand it's going to take time because this wasn't the plan. So it's really, really cool. Yeah, yeah.
No, I'm aware that we need to like wrap up this call soon, but uh, I'm sitting here listening, right? And we're talking about how we manage tensions with other people. But what's dawning on me is what do we all do when we have tensions within ourselves? Like there's nobody else to fight with. I'm only fighting with myself here. So look, we have a problem. You have a problem in your life, right? So again, I'll apply it to myself. Let's just say you're paying the bills. You're looking at your financials and you're like, this is a problem. I have a problem here. I have to pay my bill. I can figure out how to do that. And I'm going to do the best I can. But then you engage in attention. Well, and engaging in attention with myself that sounds something along the lines of, this blows. What the fuck? Why are you not in a better place at this part in your life? Like you're having this tension. I'm having this tension with myself. So I'm wondering, tensions are not always involving another person, right? Like we have tensions within ourselves. So how do we manage that? How do you manage to get out of the shitstorm of you're a loser, you're this, you're that, because you should be much more advanced in your life, and switch that. Like the awareness game has to be top notch when you're in a battle with yourself. It's the second I realize I am beating the crap out of myself, I have to shift and match my own energy, right? Like say, okay, let's just try to diffuse the situation internally. So does anybody is this something for anybody else before we wrap up
That
that we'd
is
like to
definitely
discuss?
another conversation because this is all going into self-talk, isn't it? It's communication again. How do I talk to myself? Do I beat myself up? Do I compare myself to other people? The shoulds, the have tos, the musts, and oh, this is a whole world of conversations.
So I bring that up because if we're doing that with ourselves, 9 out of 10 times, we're going to do it with other people. And that's why it again becomes a game of return to sender. Check yourself, check your self-talk, because that self-talk, if it's clean, is how you're going to present to everybody else. So I think that's my closing thought on this whole managing tensions. It starts with the self, because you have tension with yourself, and how you deal with yourself is how you're going to deal with other people. So that's my closing thought on this.
My closing thought is that it doesn't matter how much we think we're kind of all mature and on this journey of personal growth and how developed we think we are, we all fall back at times into the same traps, don't we? And we all have to hold ourselves back and self-check and go like, oh, old patterns coming up here. So it's a constant again, reevaluating where I'm at, what I'm doing, why are these feelings coming up, how am I reacting, what are I expecting of other people. It's a constant check-in, and that's my takeaway from it.
Yeah, I guess my closing, I'll say, even if you are aware, it's still a work in progress because there are times that um, you may fall back and it's catching yourself and being flexible and just reading people and allowing yourself to be aware as to what's the other person like. You'll see people faces light up or whatever it is. You're like, oh, what did I just say? Like that awareness. If you have that awareness, you can then reflect back to what you said and pause that conversation for a minute. So yeah, it does definitely start with myself, the first person. And even if it's not, if even if somebody's bringing it to you, it still starts with you because you have a 50% role in that communication. So there's your part that's being played and moving through it. So yeah, great conversation.
Yeah. I think you said that it all starts with, and I think all of us, it all starts with you. It all starts with me, right? And to know that we have never arrived. So there's going to be times when we revert back to an old me that, oh yeah, I used to do that, but I thought I recovered or, I improved. So now, but we always have, and I think this is what you alluded to, Erica, we have to give ourselves grace. With the self-talk, we have to give ourselves grace, knowing that there is no destination. This is a journey, right? And and so we have to be aware and we have to, I believe we have to. I don't like using have to, but it is good. We should want to be able to introspect and know where we're coming from and know the why behind how we're reacting or how we're responding so that we can, if the situation is high, like I think you said, Brent, calm it down, take a breath, and respond.
Fantastic thoughts, all. And I love it all starts with I, me, myself, and I. And we've had so many conversations that mention conflict resolution, de escalation, and that tension and communication aspect. It's the only things we've got control over, isn't it? It's our emotional response to what's happening. And then, a bit like Erica said, what we then put on emotionally to others, we can either watch the whole domino effect that came from our response to potentially a minor problem, or, as you've all said, take the mature, wise minded path and reflect and recognize I've got this opportunity to respond in that mature and characterful way. So we've well and truly chummed the water for a conversation about boundaries, which fit extremely closely with problems and tensions. So please join us for that, which will be our next episode. And for now, thank you and cheerio.